You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing, beautiful listeners. Thank you for joining me, and how are you today? I think it's been a while since we have taken a moment to pause and stop and slow down. Those of you that have listened to me for a while know that I have a hard time slowing down, pausing, and just being in the present. I have gotten so much better as I have practiced, so don't lose hope. But it's why sometimes I like to open the podcast with just giving you a moment to breathe, giving you a moment to orient to where you are. It's called the where self. So right now, and you can do this while you're driving, walking, wherever you are at, just take a moment and bring your attention to your feet. Just notice your feet and deepen your feet into the ground just a little bit more. In fact, imagine roots coming out of the bottom of your feet and anchoring deep into the center of the earth. Just give that visual and allow the energy to pull you deeper into earth, deeper into grounding. And then night or day, take a moment and just notice where the sun or the moon might be. Is it right up above you, to the front, left, right, behind? Just taking that time to orient to where you are. Maybe notice some colors, even if you're driving. Just notice the colors around you and maybe name them out loud. Bring your attention to your breath. Just take a deep breath in through the nose and slowly let that breath come out of your mouth, out of your nose. But imagine that breath pushing all the way down through your body and out the bottom of your feet. Just do that a couple times. Now, if you notice some emotion coming up, that's a good thing. And if you can, push pause on me and take some time to allow that emotion to come through. Sometimes we are bracing and armoring without even realizing it. And when we give a little bit of movement to our body, a little attention to our body, and come out of that bracing and armoring state, emotion can come through. Make space for emotion to come through. I've done this on the podcast enough times, and I had someone reach out and say, every time you do a little pause or meditation, I start to cry. Like, stop it. For a message. Like, stop. But I'm like, sorry, not sorry. It is so good for that emotion to come through and take a moment and gather some information to what that emotion wants you to know just right now. Either way, just slowing down is good. And if you're a New Year resolution or goal-driven person, you haven't added slowing down, meditation, pausing to your daily routine yet, here's your invitation to start today. Now, today I'm going to talk about something that can bring up some emotions and where many of you might be either feeling stuck in this, why me? Like, why did this have to happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? Because all I did was love. When you did most of the work, a lot of the work, when you loved so deeply, when you kept showing up, forgiving, trying, going to therapy, doing all of the things, yet this still happened. Maybe your brain is even going back to childhood. I did all the right things. I was a good girl, followed the rules, thought I married the right guy. So why me? And this isn't like this dramatic why me. It's deeply human, aching, why me? I didn't choose this. I didn't earn this. I didn't deserve it. I didn't ask for it. Those of you that are asking yourself this question right now, or feel stuck maybe in this question. First, let's drop any judgment because this doesn't mean that you're weak. And this doesn't mean that you're being dramatic. It does not make it mean anything right now, except that you're human and that your nervous system is trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. And as you've heard me say before, I don't know where I heard this quote before, so this isn't my quote. You're never going to understand behavior that you never behaved in. It makes There's a level of not knowing that's going to go along with betrayal, abuse, and a life-saving divorce. When betrayal hits us like an earthquake, it doesn't just hurt, it breaks our assumptions and what we thought we knew about the entire world. So there's this belief that I think a lot of us had, often without really knowing, but it's if I loved well, if I'm kind, if I sacrifice, if I, again, do all of the right things, then my relationship will be safe. When betrayal enters your experience, it's part of your story, this subconscious contract that I think a lot of us made with ourselves, with that belief that if I, then nothing bad will happen or pain won't happen, it gets all ripped up. And then suddenly everything in the world seems very, very unfair. And because your brain wants the world to feel safe again, that's what it's designed to do. It's going to search for the reason to answer that question, why me? It thinks if I can just figure out why this happened, maybe I can protect myself better next time. Maybe I can prevent this from ever happening again. So the question, why me, isn't really always curiosity. It's your nervous system saying, please tell me that I'm still safe. Please tell me that there's some logic here. Please tell me there was something that I could have controlled in how this went down. And then oftentimes we add a layer of identity to this as well. And so now the questions is going to sound more like, why wasn't I enough? Am I replaceable? Those of you whose partners are moving on so quickly, gosh, that makes you feel very replaceable. So is there something wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And maybe I just attract pain. Maybe I just attract harm and pain and all of the bad things in life. So really what I want to start with saying very, very clearly is none of those beliefs are true. Those are trauma thoughts trying to create some kind of order, because what happened to you is absolute chaos. One thing that I think can be really helpful when we are in this state of why me and asking this question is to be aware of the difference between rumination and reflection. Reflection comes with that curiosity. You remember, curiosity is one of the 8 characteristics of the higher self. If we're talking about the modality internal family systems, anytime we step into curiosity, which is why my favorite word is interesting. When I say that, I drop into that curiosity, pulls me out of judgment or shame or blame. It allows a little bit more movement towards compassion. It allows some nuance to kind of figure things out. Rumination loops. Rumination keeps that circle, the same painful questions that you're asking. Why did this happen? How could he do this? Wait, well, he said that, and well, he said this, and well, maybe if his therapist did this, or if that happened this way, or right, that rumination is going to loop and circle around and around and around without any relief. And so the why me question often turns into rumination because there is no big answer enough to match the pain of the injustice that happened. So if you notice your brain going back there to that place again and again, that's trauma logic. And that's where we get to slowly, gently begin to shift the question from why did this happen to me to maybe what do I need right now? What supports my nervous system right now? And how can I honor myself in this story? In grief and trauma research, there's this idea called meaning making. And us humans almost can't even help it. We are story creatures. We want life to add up. We want dots to connect. We want all the puzzle pieces to fit together. We want things to mean something. And when something is missing, it drives us crazy. Every holiday, my husband puts a ginormous puzzle together and all of my kids help in. We have this huge table that gets set up in one of the other rooms and people just float in and out of the puzzle room and put some pieces together. And every year, one of the puzzle pieces ends up missing, falling on the floor. No one sees it. It drives everybody crazy when they're looking for that one puzzle piece. The brain works the same way. We're designed this way. We have to balance it out because meaning making only heals when it grows out of compassion and agency. My coach years ago used to say, you're never going to hate yourself into change. It becomes painful when the meaning turns inward and becomes, this must be my fault. I shouldn't, right? I should have seen it. I must attract this. I'm not lovable enough. Maybe this says something about my worth and my value, right? That isn't meaning. That's self-blame. And the brain thinks it's wisdom, right? It's again trying to find that piece of the puzzle that's on the floor that we can't see right now. And your brain's designed to want answers. Of course, you want answers. Of course, you want something to make this fair, to make it just, to make it freaking make sense, to make the pain, again, to make the pain go away. A lot of times we're also trying to solve for negative emotion. And so many of us believe very deeply in justice, in honesty, and in love. That is not wrong or a bad thing. But the meaning that we're, I think, looking for with this question, why me, doesn't usually come in the middle of the pain. It usually comes up much later. And in hindsight, when the dust starts to settle, when your body physically starts to feel safe again, when you can start to breathe again. And remember, meaning, finding meaning and the answer to the why me isn't saying it's good that this happened, right? We don't ever need to get to that place. I know that a lot of people will make comments like that. And I'll be honest, part of my own post-traumatic growth is not that this is good it happened, but I can see my growth because of what's happened. And I'm grateful for the growth. But I'll never say that it was good that I was betrayed or that it was good that my children experienced divorce from parents. So I really want to make sure you're hearing me correctly here. That's not what I think we need to land on with finding the answer to the meaning or to the why me question right now. Meaning can be, I didn't choose this and I would never choose it for myself or anybody else, but I am going to choose what happens next. I also see a lot of the why me questions kind of ending up inside religion really quickly. And depending on your story and your background and your religion or non-religion, that might feel very, very deeply comforting or really, really complicated and sometimes even activating. What I do know is that when people feel connected to something bigger than themselves, whether it's God, the universe, love, nature, purpose, wise higher self, it can soften the isolation of the pain that we're experiencing. I don't think this is necessarily forcing yourself to believe anything right now, because I know, and I'll just speak for myself, I know that when I was in that why me, why did this happen to me? It was attached to my religion at the time and what I had believed at the time about my faith and about God. And so I was actually really pissed at God and I didn't want to talk to him and I didn't want to hear from him. So the why me personally was distancing myself from higher power because of how tangled religion got into this as well. I don't necessarily want to jump into that, but I want to give voice to, I guess, normalize. That can create a little bit of additional complexity with this question, why me? But what I do know is that, and one thing that helped me is finding a higher power that did feel safe and comfortable for a time. So if that's the sun, if that's water, if that's earth, journaling, prayer, meditation, It doesn't have to look a particular way right now. Really, sometimes the most healing thing that you can say isn't this happened for a reason, but I'm not alone in this. And so when we're looking for support in this space of why me? Why did this happen to me? How could this happen to me? That sense of being alone in it is really, really heavy. Finding someone that maybe is a little bit ahead, farther ahead of you in this journey can be helpful. Finding a higher power, something bigger than you can be helpful. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I fell across this movie on, I don't know, I think it was like Primetime Video or something. It's a movie about the real life story of John O'Leary. It's called Soul on Fire. He was burned as a child in a house fire. He lost his hands, and he talks about how often he asked this question, why me? And like I was saying before, how it depicted in the movie. He's in the hospital, he's wrapped up in all of these bandages, excruciating pain. Like, I just can't even begin to imagine, and if I do, I'll start crying, the amount of pain that a little child would feel with his body burned like that and all that has to go into burn care. In the movie, he was asking that question a lot in the pain. Him lying in the hospital right then at that time with all of that excruciating pain is not when the answer to that question is gonna come. Now, I'm not gonna make an absolute and say never, but meaning generally does not come in the middle of that pain. So, of course, you are asking this question when you're in the middle of pain. You're surviving. He was surviving and fighting for his very life at that time. There were a couple different moments between his mom and dad. And at one point, his dad also, like, John, you get to decide, victim or victor. And he was like, no one would ever blame you for staying a victim after what you lived through, but you still get to choose who you are going to be. And I loved that line. It really resonated with me because his dad wasn't trying to erase the pain or minimize the pain that his son was experiencing. And his mom, as she's watching him get wheeled off to surgery, could see the amount of excruciating pain that he was in. And it was actually really touching because as a mom, it was like, I would be like, "You fight, you don't have a choice, you're going to live," and it was really humbling and touching and teaching to me where she's like, "You have a choice." And she, in that amazing mother wisdom, realized that because this is his pain, this is going to be his experience and journey the rest of his life, he had to be the one to make the choice. She couldn't make that choice for him. And it really resonated with me and touched, like pulled at all of my mama heartstrings because when you go through this experience, we all know that our children are impacted and our children have big feelings and how many of us want to solve and resolve for our children's emotions and make that choice for them in a way. You will survive, right? But they have to make the choice themselves too. I had a client the other day talk about this. She's right in the middle of her ex literally turning her children against her. She's reading all of these messages and it's just, anyways, it's ridiculous. Her fear is that her children are going to believe him. They're going to turn against her. And ultimately, we had to land on that she can't control that, that those children ultimately have to make the choice. They're in the middle of pain. Their father's creating and manipulating, but the kids still have to make a choice. So this moment of John being wheeled off and his mom saying, John, you get to choose if you live or die. And then his dad saying, John, you get to decide, victim or victor. Again, not erasing the pain, but at some point, we have to take that power back. John O'Leary is now a public motivational speaker. And one of the things that he says is that your past does not define you. It can't. And I believe that, I say that, and I want you to hear that. Betrayal doesn't define you. Divorce doesn't define you. The choices that your ex, or maybe soon to be ex, made and is making does not define your worth or your future. Your story is going to include trauma. but you are not your trauma. Later in John O'Leary's life, he said that some of the best parts of his life grew out of the hardest parts. Again, not because the pain was good, not because it was justified, but because he chose to build something really meaningful after. And he talks a lot about gratitude. And I think gratitude is one of those principles that are true, necessary, part of post traumatic growth. And I think timing matters. Oh, and I also, going back to meaning making, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler wrote the book On Grief and Grieving. After Elizabeth Kubler-Ross passed away, David Kessler wrote an additional book called Meaning Making. I think that's the name of it. But he adds a stage to the grief cycle. And really, it's answering that question, why? Why me? Why did this happen? And he talks about how that comes at the very end and really is part of that growth moving through the grief, not to get rid of it. I don't think grief ever goes away. I think we learn to tell a story with our grief. I think we learn to live with the grief in a different way. I think we learn to identify with grief differently. I think the meaning making helps us to live with the grief, the loss that comes with circumstances like this, which is why over time, the story and the meaning that the grief has can shift towards gratitude. Gratitude doesn't erase the grief or the injustice. It doesn't ask you to minimize the harm that was done, but it keeps you, at least in my experience, from shrinking your entire identity down towards the worst thing that ever happened to you. That's how I see a lot of people stay in victim mentality, is that they don't realize oftentimes how they have literally shrunk themselves down into identifying with the why, with the event. If you are in this place right now of asking why me, I really want to honor that. I hope that everything I've shared validates this place and not tries to push you out of it. I think there's purpose to be in this place. I think there's a way that we can be in this place without, again, letting the ruminations spin us around, more of the reflection to seek more information and clarity and compassion. We can start to make some shifts when you're ready from why did this happen to me to what do I choose now? And that might even just look like, what do I choose just in this next hour, right? Or how do I want to show up for myself despite what's happened? And always check in with that nervous system that is seeking safety with this question. Where do I feel safe just right now? And maybe that is just in this moment that you're driving in the car. You just start there. Eventually, asking yourself, what kind of life do I want to build from here on out? So, why me? Because you didn't choose betrayal, because you didn't choose abuse, because you didn't choose to fracture. You didn't choose the fracture of divorce. You do get to choose how you care for yourself right now. You do get to choose your boundaries. You do get to choose how your healing path looks today. If you want to do a little additional work or processing, one thing that can often help with this why me place that we're in is start to write your story. Literally writing out your story. When your brain's trying to find the answers outside of you, the real healing and meaning making is going to come from inside of you. You're the one that needs to find the answers to some of these really big questions. And you do have the answers within. And sometimes the most empowering response to why me isn't an answer at all. Maybe it's, even right here, I still belong to myself. I still matter. And I still get to choose how I show up for me. Even in this place here, my life is not over. And it is evolving. I promise. That, my friend, is power. That is having an empowered divorce. You are the chooser in your life. You do create the life that you want from this moment, right here, right now, because you can. Take care, everybody.